to the Freedom Podcast, and we're back with Pastor Dave Thomas.
Come
Hello, Dave.
on, oi oi. Which one do we go with? Let's
Whatever
just
you
go with
like.
oi oi. Come on, Josh.
How are you, mate?
Mate, doing great, doing great. It's a busy season here in Charleston. We are building our launch team, and we're seeing God do some amazing things. Last week we had an interest night. We had 72 people.
That is
It was only
crazy.
I know, yeah, it was. It was
That
only
is
like
amazing.
a couple of days after. So I was like 72 vision. Come on.
Wow.
I'm going to be honest, I think it was just a coincidence, but it was great and it was encouraging.
You got to take everything.
Exactly. Is it a sign? Yes, it is. Let's go. But no, it was awesome. So we're seeing our launch team grow, and God's bringing people in, just all kinds of amazing stories and journeys. So yeah, it's busy time, but very exciting.
So if you've been tracking the Freedom Church journey at all, you will know that one of the ways that we've often planted churches is to either send a couple to get started, or even an individual to get started in a city and start reaching people and then starting to meet with those people. But another way that we've done it a lot over the years is by sending a whole bunch of people, maybe a dozen people, and they start to outreach together and do that in a bigger way. But this way is actually a new way, isn't it, Dave? Which is actually to parachute into a city and to start to connect to people and say, hey, we're going to be doing something and we think you can be a part of it. And that's the process you're in right now. So going to be launching Courageous Church in 2024.
Yeah. Should we give a date away? We have a date in mind.
I don't know.
No,
Do you want to? Are you okay? I was going to say, are you promoting that date yet? So right now you are essentially telling people about the vision and inviting them to be a part of that, and saying, "Would you like to get involved?" And it's amazing because you obviously had 72 people there saying, "Yes, we want to be involved in this," or "We're interested to know more about it." So really cool days. I think you've got 40 confirmed, is it, so far?
No, we do more sort of in the low 30s at the moment. We've got about another follow-up, about 10 or 12 people this week. So we're hoping that we're going to get into the 40s very soon, which is exciting. And just for those of us tracking the journey with Freedom, one of the bits of, one of the Bible stories that's really kind of spoken to Saz and I as we've pivoted and we're trying to, plant in this different way is the difference that often when it comes to like a miracle of God, there's two different camps of people: the people receiving the miracle and the people serving the miracle. And that's really the invitation we're giving to people is, hey, do you feel like this is a season that God's calling you to come and serve the miracle? Like with the feeding of the 5,000, there was 5,000 people receiving it, but there was probably 12, maybe 15 serving it. But it was actually those that served the miracle that went on to mark history. And that's really the conversation we're having with people is this a season? And the amazing thing is there are people who are just going, yeah, this is what God's called me for. This is what I want to put my life behind, which is wild just to think about that. But then you think back to Jesus, that's exactly what he did. And so, we just feel very excited to be learning this kind of like new way of doing it.
What do you think? And Dave, this is going to pivot slightly from what we were talking about earlier before the call, but what do you think it is that draws people to something like this? Why would they want to be a part of something? Hey, these guys are turning up and you're inviting them to give up some of their time on a Sunday. What do you think it is the draw?
I think it's a great question. I think it's probably different for different people. I think if we start with maybe the easiest answer, those with like established faith, I think we come alive when we can put our shoulder and our life to what Jesus is doing. And I think for the majority of us that follow Jesus, know him, when we get an opportunity to be a part of what he's doing, I think that's vastly exciting. You and I, we've given our lives to do exactly that. We've moved across nations to do exactly that. So I think for those of us with faith, there's an element of wanting our lives to matter in more than just a going through the motions kind of way. And so we're seeing people really come alive in that, really wanting to bring something of who they are to the table. I think it's also just an invitation to purpose. that actually you could do something that matters, and mattering for people beyond yourself. That seems to be something that people are really responding to, just saying, hey, I don't just want to look out for my own faith, but I want to actually be a part of seeing that change other people's lives. I think that's huge. But one of the things that we're really seeing move in people is we're asking them what's the dreams in their hearts. And we've all got a dream in our own hearts. And actually, we don't necessarily know it, but the best way to answer those dreams is through the local church.
Right.
And so I think when we're seeing that combined with people, it's really just the opportunity to do something that matters, be a part of something that has an eternal significance, bring something to the table. People want to bring something, want to make a difference. We met with somebody today. They're in a quite a unique circumstance. They're not able to do a lot physically, but they were saying, hey, I'm in front of my laptop most of the day. I want to do something that makes a difference. I want to make a difference. So I think it's really awakening that in people. And you've spoke about this, I think, on the last time we did a podcast together, but that's what Jesus awoke in the disciples. They had a desire to live for something bigger than themselves. So they're just some of the things that off the top of my head that I think people are responding to.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because what you're essentially saying to people when you are coming and giving this invitation, it's an invitation to serve, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like we're there. And I think even for the way that we have built church up till now, where we've planted into a new city, is that we have said, hey, you are invited to attend. Where this is an invitation to serve, to be a part of it. It's like, hey, would you come and help us set up our parking lot? Would you help us come and set up our children's spaces? Would you help us set up at 6 a.m. or whatever it might be? And it's a really interesting thing because there's something actually in our human nature that does desire to serve. And I think that's one of the things that we have been almost seeing people come alive in over these last weeks, even with Charleston, seeing people saying, yeah, I want to come and give up my time and serve and be a part of this. And I think there's something about the power of service that is so Christ in us. That's the way that Jesus was. He said that the Son of Man came to serve, not to use his power to rule in a way that takes advantage of that power, but actually coming to serve instead. And I think that there is something so Christ-like that actually we're seeing people come alive in by finding a place to serve.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it was interesting. There's an amazing couple. I won't name them right now, but they came to our first interest night. We had a follow-up dinner with them. Then they came to another event. They said, hey, we're in. And they said, but so sorry, the next interest night and the next Sunday, we're already booked to be away. And they were having to leave town between 7 and 7:30, and the event started at 6:30. One half of the couple couldn't get there. They were in work. The other was like, can I come and just do something? Can I come and help in some way? I was like, well, we're probably going to have most of it set up. And they're like, I'll come anyway. So they come 45 minutes before the start of the event. They're there helping Saz and other kids get the flags outside the front. Then we realized, oh my goodness, we've got an issue with batteries. They're like, I'll go. Just jumped in the car, went to the store, got batteries, all squeezing in because there's just this desire to want to help and to want to make a difference. And then we text them that night because they were away saying we had 72 people. And all they got to contribute, they weren't at the event. They didn't get to meet anybody. They had to run across town in rush hour to go and get batteries. And yet somehow their life mattered. And, we're actually meeting with the other half of that couple at the end of this week because they're a videographer. We said, hey, we've got a real desire to take some of the creative videos we've done as Freedom over the years and localize. Yeah, I want to know. So we're talking with them a few of the projects. And these are people that honestly, Saz and I have known for 3 weeks, if that. And again, great. Not every one of our early sort of core like launch team are into that extent, but an extensive number are. And it's just really quite amazing. One of the things that I'll never forget Rose preaching. I've talked about this so many times. I'll never forget Rose preaching about the miracle of the turning the water into wine. It was one of those preachers, just marked me. It stuck with me. And she talked about the difference that it must have made to the disciples' lives to have seen the water turn into wine versus having just drunk the wine. And I think that's, in a way, we can feel guilty for giving people an opportunity to serve. But I go back to what I said earlier. It was those who served the miracle that went on to die for the faith. It was those who served the miracle that knew who it was that turned the water into wine, that knew the bread that was just a few loaves. And I think that what God's doing in causing us to pivot this is actually, it's going to be that couple in 5 years' time that are going to be able to say, I ran to get batteries on that night. I saw Jesus do something. It's going to be the people that come in at this point, and it's actually going to change their lives. And so I think we've got to become bolder about giving people an opportunity to serve, because actually we're not just giving somebody an opportunity to serve. We're actually giving somebody an opportunity to encounter a miracle from a perspective that very few other people will have. And for us as leaders, for me, that's a real faith test, because actually it's like, do I really believe? Yeah, I do believe God's going to move. And so I'm excited that we get to experience that here. But I think as we pivot and we plant church in this way, it's going to happen all over the world.
Absolutely. And I love that idea that actually people are getting, it's almost like when you get like an early promotion or early deal on something that's like, it's exclusive. And that's what it's like being involved in something like this, is that you're going to get to a front row seat to something that not a lot of other people are going to be able to say, I was there, but you can. And if you're listening to this and in Charleston or connected to Charleston or know somebody with family there, it's like, I want them to not miss out on this amazing opportunity that they have to be on the front row of the miracle seats of what's going to unfold in 2024. It's going to be amazing. So just encourage you, if you know somebody, reach out to them, give them a nudge, give them a prompt to get in touch with the team in Charleston. I know that you guys would love to get them involved.
Oh, 100%. You want a coffee, we'll take you for a coffee, lunch, dinner. You want to hang out, go for a walk, we'll do whatever. We are connecting with everybody, but 100%. And I think one of the amazing things that's happening is we have had a number of people connecting through relationships.
Right.
And, you know, it's the power of testimony. We've got a guy that has joined our launch team. I was out for a coffee walk with him at 7 a.m. this morning, lived next door to one of our couples in Raleigh who did the academy 4 or 5 years ago. And it's just, again, amazing to see the domino effect of the testimony. And now I believe in 4 or 5 years' time, somebody else he's connected to will probably be in one of it's awesome. It is amazing.
So cool. When I think, Dave, of obviously our own journeys with serving and getting a chance to be involved, obviously we both got the privilege now to be able to work for the church. But we both obviously started out by just having a role which was voluntary and just serving. And talk to us a little bit about what that was like for you, wherever you were at that time. I'm not sure whether that was whether your first church in Cardiff, but what it was like starting to serve and take place. What happened through that, and how God moved through that.
Yeah, I mean, probably my first ever place that I really got to serve in, I guess, a ministry or like a Christian church type thing was at university.
Right.
I got part of the CU. I got saved not that long before I left for university, didn't get massively plugged into my church. And so that was huge for me. And I think it really sort of exposed me to like different aspects. I mean, that's where I started to lead worship. That's where I started to play. You know, I probably would never have gotten into that had I not had that opportunity. And also, had there not been the need, because Josh, I was terrible, but I was marginally better than other people. No, I was. I couldn't strum and sing at the same time. So I used to strum a chord and then sing the line and then strum. I was terrible. I'm not a natural musician.
Did you ever try bass? Did you ever try bass at the same time? Because I can recommend that. It's possible.
There's a bit more room in the notes. No, I never did. I'm rubbish at bass. So there you go. That's a statement. But I think first and foremost, serving actually awoke gifts in me that I genuinely didn't even know were there, that I only discovered because of need. And so I think that's a powerful thing. You know, again, we can almost want it to be further along. Then I ended up working for a church. And so it was almost like a function. The big thing that changed my life was when I came to Freedom. And I've told this story before, but I was full of pride and different things like that. And I'll never forget saying to Pastor G, hey, you need anybody to lead worship or preach or anything like this? And he said, hey, that's great. Can you put out chairs on the Sunday? And Saz and I put out chairs, and we were on production for maybe about a year, 18 months, something like that. And honestly, mate, and this is not a line, it still stands out as one of my favorite times in the last 15, 16 years of being part of Freedom. Because it wasn't about a title, it wasn't about a platform, It wasn't about a role. It was about making a difference outside of ourselves. I remember it, mate. I have vivid memories. I can tell you where we used to set up and how we used to do it. I loved it because it changed something in me. It went to work at those things in me. I would never, you know, some people it's like, oh, well, I'll put out the chairs or I'll do this role so that I can, I would go back to that in a click of fingers, because it was so awesome to see. It was this time when the church was blowing up. There were new people coming in, you know, every week having to put out 60 chairs and then 70 chairs and then 80 chairs and then 100 chairs. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And it changed something in me that I guess is probably a foundation for now being employed and, you know, getting paid for what we do. I've never lost, I think because of that season, never lost the thing of, we'll go above and beyond. Don't want to hog this, but Sunday morning we went in and there were a few things that had happened in the week, which meant we had more work to do. And we got in there with our kids, and our kids were part of that setting up, and they were just loving it, mate. They were loving it. And I was thinking to myself, this is what I want my kids to be involved in. You know, I want them to remember what it was
really
like.
Good.
You know, sorry, I'll pause there because I get excited about it.
No, I love it, mate. And I think that we're passionate about serving and the role that it has in our lives, because it does do something in us. And I was just reflecting on my own, you know, even when I was a kid, I think the first thing that I ever did for the church, I was 11, I think, and I was doing the acetates. So
overhead
the OHP overhead projector, you know, you'd have these kind of thin pieces of plastic that you would then put the lyrics on before projectors. Wow, I sound so old. And you'd write, you know, either type them on like on a computer, or actually they were handwritten onto the plastic acetate, and then it would go and shine onto the wall. And, you know, you had to make sure it wasn't upside down because that would confuse everyone. And then you'd have to make sure it wasn't back to front. And there was someone that did, in a legendary way, do back to front and upside down, and they kept turning it and changing it, and they couldn't get it right. It was so confusing for everybody. I think we missed half the song. But fantastic. That was my first kind of role into the church in terms of like serving and feeling some sense of connection and responsibility to what was happening. And I'm someone who's very passionate about that. Everyone's got a place and a purpose within the body of Christ. We've all got something to do. But when you can actually partake in something, it totally changes your relationship with it. And rather than just attending, you're actually involved. It's so good. And I think it's the way that we were designed to be. Even like for Jesus, he's doing the feeding of the 5,000, and he's like, you feed them. And then they have to come up with the food that they start with, that then Jesus multiplies. And then Jesus like gets, right, you guys go distribute it. You hand it out. Right, everyone's eaten. You pick it all up. So these guys were going to be pastors, preachers, church planters, but they started by giving out food. They started by serving in the ways that a lot of us do. And I'm sure, just like you were saying then, Dave, that they looked back in those times with wonder and amazement and thankfulness. And I think that when we have that concept and that idea, these are not jobs to do. This is not, chores. This is not this is a privilege. This is an opportunity. So and actually, Jesus himself was the servant king. that actually he came and he washed the disciples' feet, and they were shocked because he was the leader. He's the one who they should all be serving. And he's saying, no, this is how it works in my kingdom. And he gets down on his knees and he washes their filthy feet where they've been traveling.
Wild.
And it's such a topsy-turvy, upside down thing, but it's that this is how things work in this kingdom that I'm building. And I want that to be so true for every person that's in our church. But I know that there are a lot of people that listen to this that they already serve. They're already involved in some way. But it's more than just about your own serving. It's about finding a way to help others serve and creating opportunity for them. So even like you were saying, Dave, that there's someone who who's saying, hey, I've got to come early and I could help set. You could say, no, it's okay. We've got it covered. Thanks. But you said, no, yeah, you can still come and be involved and do what you can. And that gives someone an opportunity to be involved. And I think something that I'm very passionate about as a pastor, I'm not always going to say yes because I need to, but because I want to. I want to make room for you to be able to come and be involved and find a place and find your fit.
Yeah, and I think you're really good at that, Josh. And I think you've been a good inspiration to me about really always finding something for people or creating space for people in that. And I think especially like at that entry point level as well. It's, when you first meeting somebody or first opportunity is something so powerful because you see somebody's heart in that as well. So for those of us that may be in an opportunity of or in a position of leadership or a role of leadership, I think sometimes the best way to really get to know somebody is actually find an opportunity to see how they serve. It's a great thing. But also one of the other things is it's relational. You go through something together. So, this particular person who came early, we were running around getting stuff, that we'll have the story that's like, oh, do you remember when you had to run out and you had to get batteries? Oh, I can't believe I forgot them, or something like that. There's something you partake together in that actually builds relationship.
Right.
I do think we often look at serving like a job to get done, something to be fulfilled. And of course, that's part of it. But actually, it's the journey you go on. Can you imagine the conversation around the fire that night after the feeding of the 5,000? The 12 are there. And, maybe one of the 12 was not there when the kid brought the things. And they're saying, where did he get all the bread from? You'll never believe it. Do you remember? Did you hear that? And I think there's just something so beautiful and so powerful about that. And almost not being afraid of the need. I think that's a whole new thing for me with people that are so fresh to this here. It's like, yeah, actually, we need you. Like, we need you. I'm not used to saying that to people. And yet people are like, great, I want to help. I want to be a part of this.
People want
brilliant.
to feel needed though, don't they? It's like they want to, there's no good almost just saying, like we've had loads of people starting to come and serve now and get involved in our church, like a new influx of people since we did our opening. And it's been amazing to see them stepping into their roles. I love it. I love walking around and seeing new people who I'm not even sure of their names yet. And they're like serving and being a part of what's happening on our Sundays. But it's a great place for people to come and find their fit and come find their place within the kingdom rather than just attending. They're a part of the fabric of the place. And they then, what's one of the crazy thing is I was watching someone on Sunday. They were new into our church 8 weeks ago. Now they're on the VIP team. Now they're welcoming people that have come into our church for the first time, telling them about how our church operates, telling them about who we are, telling them about how they can get involved. And it's like, I haven't even had a chance to talk to these new people, but they have been spoken to by the people that joined 8 weeks ago. And they're on team, welcoming them, loving them, showing them the love that they received, now showing them that love as those new people come in.
I know you've spoken about this a little bit and we've talked a bit about the pivot, but obviously one of the big changes we've made is this thing called Growth Track, and you guys are the first location to do that. How's that been for you and Rose after, all these years of bringing people into our churches, into our locations? What's that been like and how's that worked?
Well, it's been So great. I've loved doing it. We've done it now. We're in our third one. We did it with the whole the team that were with us before we did our opening. Then we did it again through October with the people that had just joined the church, and then we've just done a third one now in November, and we've done week 2 of that. It's been so great to see people coming in, obviously finding out about the story of our church, but also getting to hear some of their story. But then also, like this last week for week 2, we talk about what's inside you, and even the some of this conversation that we're having. There is purpose, there is potential in every person, and I want to see it realized. I want to see it come out of you. I don't want you to just go through your life like living through a job you don't really enjoy. You should come alive on a Sunday with the privilege and opportunity that it is to build this kingdom. And someone who I was talking to last night, actually, one of our teams, she's just been in our church in Mileage for a few months, but she was saying to me, I absolutely love Sundays. I come alive with it. It's what I was made to do. And she's talking about serving and being involved. It's that I am on a high right now. And even for me as a pastor, I'm sat there in our church on Sunday morning, and we're singing the worship songs the second time through. We're now hearing the message the second time through, and I'm just sat there with a big smile on my face. I just can't believe I get to be a part of this. It's amazing, like that we get to do this. It's not like, oh, it's we're sitting through the second service now. It's like, what a privilege. This is incredible. And I think that seeing people come through Growth Track and starting to find their fit has been so encouraging, because it's created a really easy onboarding into the church. And that's the thing. So I was seeing this new person, that was telling this VIP, this someone who'd been in our church 2 months was telling someone who'd been in our church for one Sunday about Growth Track. They knew themselves, this is what you do now. You go on Growth Track and you can connect. If you loved it today, you should come to Growth Track. We've got the first one in December. Like, they don't need to find out, oh, I'll write your name down, or I'll come back to you when the next one is. It's like they know when it is. And that's been super helpful and amazing to see unfold. And our team that run the Growth Track with us, because we do Growth Track where we teach from the front, but then we have table hosts that sit with like 3, 4, 5, 6 people who are doing Growth Track, and they will almost host the table, generate the conversation. They love doing it. We don't have any trouble saying, oh, do you mind coming back later today? And people love it.
Oh, mate, it's so good. And I know that some of our locations are starting to talk about some of this. Might not be something you've heard yet in your location. But this is like one of those things that's part of the pivot that we're going through as Freedom churches. And I think it is so exciting that God has led us to kind of just open the door wider, but not compromise where we're trying to lead people to, like really bringing people through to this place of owning the vision, running with the vision for the sake of, those that don't know Jesus yet or haven't found a church home yet. And I'm buzzed about it. You said a phrase there, Josh, that I think is so key. And I don't know, there's going to be people that are listening to this that have been part of our church for, 2 months and some 2 decades, very few 2 decades, but some. And you said that phrase of like, that lady said, I don't have to do this, I get to do this. And I think that's such a key thing to keeping the value of serving at what it is. I know I've gone through seasons, and maybe there'll be people listening to this that you've edged into that, I've got to do this, and that can happen. It can happen. It's natural. You get tired, whatever. But I think it's something so important that we all work to keep the get to do this mentality, the privilege, do you know what I mean?
If someone's listening to this, Dave, and they are feeling that way right now and feeling a little bit maybe they've lost some enthusiasm, or they do feel like they're going through the motions of it, or they don't love what they get to do on Sunday, what would you say to that person to invigorate them, or to give them some fresh fire in their bones for serving?
I think what would I say to them? I think firstly I would, and this might sound a bit strong or like critical. But I think get your eyes off yourself. I know that I move to the got to over the get to when I start to zero in more on me, when I start to zero in more on either what it costs me or what I have to. And what I mean by that is get your eyes off yourself and get your eyes on what God is doing. So the way that I've experienced that invigoration is just like go and look again at the stories of life change. And the stories of impact, even if perhaps you're in a season that maybe you're not seeing loads of that or you haven't seen that, I'm sure there'll be some. Go and get around a testimony. Go and ask your location leader, what's God doing at the moment? Tell me some of the stuff that, maybe you don't have that relationship, but get back around what God's doing. Get back around stories, maybe even just through this, like focus more on the story I just told about that new couple coming in than about, oh my goodness, I've got to get up at this time. Because when we take our eyes off ourselves and we get our eyes on what God's doing, that I think is hugely invigorating. I think the second thing I would say is, are there ways that you're approaching serving that are taking the joy out of it? So it's like, oh, I've been on team for this. You got to watch what's coming out of your mouth and change what's coming out of your mouth. Like, even if I know I've gone through seasons where it's like, no, I'm going to say, oh, Lord, thank you that I get to do this again. And I'm going to make a different confession. And when those thoughts come in, I arrest those thoughts and I say, God, thank you, I get to do this. So change your confession, change what you're saying. And then lastly, I think address where things might be draining. So maybe you've been doing the same thing for a long time. Maybe it's time to freshen that up. Maybe it's time to go to your leader and say, could I serve in another area? Is there something that I could, because change freshens things up. Those would be, get your eyes off yourself and get your eyes on what God's doing. Change your language from got to get to. And maybe there is a season to change and approach your leader. And if your leader says, hey, I get that, but right now we're in a season where we really need you, thank God for it and run at it and go at it. Does that make sense? What about you? What would you say?
It does. Well, I guess a couple of things I would add, and this is similar to what you just said, this one, but I would be focusing on the why. So I think that if you focus on the why, that then ignites vision within you because there's a purpose to what you're doing. So it's like, we're doing this because we're going to see God's kingdom come. We're doing this because we're going to see people impacted. So I think that's a big important one, is keep coming back to that vision and that focus of the reason why you're doing it. I think the other thing is to also remember that as we step out and we start to serve, we are becoming Christ-like through that. If Jesus was the servant king, when I serve and I get to be in that same posture, there's something of Jesus in me. So it's not like, oh, this is a job that needs to be done. Jesus himself served. And if I get to be like Jesus through doing this, humbling myself, serving, working away at something, that's a privilege. And that helps shape my character and who I am. And so I think that that's one of the things that, is so important to remember. When I think of serving through the years, there are obviously things like we serve on Sundays where we have different roles, we make church happen. But there are also, Dave, for you and I, we've had lots of things where we've done that are way beyond just doing some Sunday morning serving. We're like working into the night. I remember I started doing video work for the church. That was my one of my first roles that I did for the church. And I would do hours and hours and hours making these church news videos, making these creative videos. And I loved it. It was great times. And I think sometimes even as leaders, we can sometimes be like, oh, well, they've given quite a lot at the moment. And it's like, what else was I going to give my time to? I could have been, I don't know, watching I'm 18, 19 at this point, or 17. What am I going to be doing? Like watching my favorite show, or I don't know, up to who knows
things
what
going out.
Yeah. And it's like, instead, I'm giving hours and hours and hours of my time serving the church for no return, but absolutely loving it. And then it's played for 3 minutes on a Sunday. It's like, and I think sometimes even as we've gone and done things through the years as church leaders, be like, oh, well, we want to try and protect people there and not ask too much. And there is wisdom in that. And we don't want to overburden people. But there are times of exceptional work that actually it's really great to experience. And Rose and I talk about some of those times, like those were some of the greatest moments we've had when we've had to absolutely give everything. And I think you guys are in a season of that right now, where it's not like, oh, this is so hard and I'm having to do a lot of serving and our team's not. It's like, wow, what a privilege. What an exciting time.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think those seasons where you go to some extent, I guess, over and above, they're often the times that you get to experience the over and above. Like, you know, Saz and I we're going in more with our time and our effort and our resources and our passion and all those sorts of things. But we're watching a miracle unfold before our eyes. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I feel weirdly, I almost feel more bad for people who aren't getting to do this, because it's mad. It is mad. And you know, there are the times where you like, okay, I need to have a night off and I need to make sure that I rest and those kinds of things. But it is phenomenal. And I think lots of people ask over the years about, you know, I hope this doesn't sound arrogant. Like, I know people will say this of you and Rose. People have asked this of Saz and I. How do you do so much? You know, they talk about capacity and, you know, you're married, you've got 4 kids, you know, respectively in our families, and, you know, you go on holiday. We can do this because of the seasons we've allowed to stretch us in the past.
Right.
You know, we can do this because of the seasons we've allowed to stretch us in the past. And I think sometimes we want to grow great capacity, but we don't want to put the late hours in. We want to grow great capacity, but we like grit is a heavenly commodity, and you don't get grit by living soft. You know, you get grit by putting the hard work in and the yards and the doing the things, and you learn balance over time as well. So I think it's something so important. But one thing I did want to say, Josh, a little bit different. Maybe we'll pivot back to that bit about grit. I think if you are a leader calling people up, just make sure that you express your gratitude to them. I think people want to put in, but if you're a leader and this is a season where you're asking more or you're facilitating more from people, just thank them, give them value, feed it back to them. I know you guys are great, and you're doing that at this moment with your guys. Even like that couple I mentioned, I made sure I text them saying, just want to thank you so much again. You know, there's something about it. People will contribute where they're valued. And so if you're a leader in that, and if you're giving, don't put that demand on people to, you know, like tick through every single box, but thank the people that are around you and thank leaders for the opportunity. One of the things we try and always say to Pastor G and H is, thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, thank you for this opportunity. And it keeps your heart healthy, you know?
Come on. Yeah, that's great, Dave. And that was one of my kind of points I wanted to finish on, really, as a leader, where we almost, you can end up almost being on a conveyor belt where you come up and you don't get to serve in the same ways that you did before. And how do you keep your heart still postured towards serving and still open to that? Like, what would your recommendation be in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are times when you're leading where, in order to do what God's called you to do, you can't keep doing what you did in the past. And so there are times, like you said, you've got to almost hand those things on. But I think firstly is never get beyond it. So never think you're beyond, you know, cleaning the toilet,
really good.
Putting the chair out. You know, you used that brilliant example earlier, Jesus washing the feet. He wasn't beyond. It wasn't the case of he did it just as he wasn't beyond it. He'd do it. He wasn't beyond it. So, and it might be that as a leader, you've almost, if you struggle, if there is a pride issue that you wrestle with getting beyond it, orchestrate situations where you make yourself do it. Go in early and clean the toilets if that's what your soul needs. Like, you know what I'm saying? If that's what your soul. So I think don't ever get beyond it. Practice serving at home. If you stop serving at home, you're probably going to stop serving in leadership. So if you're married, how can you serve your spouse? If you're a parent, how can you serve your children? I think those are the areas in the private area, and ask those that you serve, no matter how high up we come in leadership, there should always be somebody you're still serving. So, you know, like right now for you and I, the question is often to Pastor G and Heather, is there any more we can do for you? Is there any more we can serve you in? And if you keep, and it's not always about serving those above you, serving those beside you and serving those below you. Ask those that are serving you, can I do anything for you? And again, you might have limited capacity. You can't offer that to everybody, but those you can, keep that in your conversation. And I think final thought on that is and again, this is perhaps a personality thing, but one of the ways that I think we can keep serving people is we love to keep having people over to our house, cooking for them, valuing them in that way. We can't do that for everybody, but I think in those authentic areas and in those personal areas, it's one of those things that just keeps that muscle going, I think, for Saz and I.
It's really good, Dave.
I'm trying to think if there's anything else. But there's some thoughts.
I think that one of the things for me as well is seeing, even growing up and seeing my parents always being willing to serve. And I think seizing hold of those opportunities when they come your way so that we would have a work day at our site in Hereford for our church there. And G&H be turning up, so you might get, I don't know, maybe 20% of the church, 25% of the church turning up, and it's a good little crew there, but not everyone comes out to do some extra time on a Saturday morning or something. But you could guarantee who would be there. And it's my parents would be there. They're like the senior pastors over the whole church, but they're still there with their marigolds on, their rubber gloves. And they're pulling things out of drains and cutting hedges. And it's like, I think that always, again, served to me as an inspiration to be like, wow, look at them. And they are senior pastors, but they've got every excuse to say, hey, we've done years and years and decades of this kind of stuff. Yeah. And yet they still show up and serve in that way. And not that I would even expect them to have to keep doing that, even as they do get older now. But I think that there is something even about their hearts that's been a great example to me over the years to be like, let's take the opportunity as leaders to continue to serve, even in those ways that are not the ways that we usually serve. We know that when we lead worship is serving, when we prepare a message, it's serving, when we're coming and connecting with a new person, it's serving. But actually there's something about those practical things of cleaning up, of painting a wall or whatever. They're great opportunities to just come and express our serving in a different way. And I think it's seizing hold of those moments.
100%, mate. And I think it's also, there's something powerful about the private as well. Like there's a difference between serving in the public and serving in the private. And so I think we can't ever overlook those opportunities. We actually have to pursue them. One thing you said there that I think was so powerful and is something I'd encourage every person in our church to pursue as part of our character as individuals is that even if you're in a scenario where you can't serve, have a heart that would want to. So, it's always blown me away when, I don't know, we do a work day and I'm getting a text off somebody saying, I'm so sorry I can't be there. Wish we could be there, and, I've got friends within our church that, they do incredibly demanding jobs and roles, but there's always a difference between the person that would be there if they could be but can't versus the person that could be there but couldn't be bothered. And the reality is that's a heart thing. So, like you said, Pastor G&H, they might be a work day going on at Hereford, but they're out, serving in Cape Town where they are right now or something like that, but they'd be there if they could be. There might be people that can't. And I think that's really the servant heart of Jesus that we need to pursue through the practical opportunities we get, and it will change us in such a good way.
Definitely. And I know we've got lots of people listening to this that have got aspirations to be people of influence in our church and to help lead and to carry the vision. And I think one of the things I'd say, if you really want to take something from this, is like show up and help, be available, do all that you can to put your shoulder to the plow and lean in, because there's something, if you want to be a people of influence, like we don't expect every person to turn out for those things or that's unrealistic. But for those people that you're like, I want to be carrying the vision, I want to be a person of influence in this church, then you've got to show up, get your marigolds on, your rubber gloves. You've got to do the work. You've got to help serve. You've got to seize hold of those opportunities. You've got to do the jobs that other people don't want to do, because that is how you become more Christ-like. That's how you become that person of influence. So I hope that's been helpful. Hope it's been something you can chew over a little bit, and hope you can take some things of that into your week. Thank you so much for joining us. Me and Dave will be back next week with another episode. Thank you all.